So I'm reading this book, Reflections on Straight Edge, which is about the straight edge scene of the 80s and 90s, and I was so inspired I wanted to do a video about it for you guys. And so what's kind of interesting with Reflections on Straight Edge is how you have these teenage kids who manage to build something up so that they could tour the world. And that's not really something you see anymore. You know, a lot of teenage kids in today's scene, they're still learning, they're still trying to figure it out. Grabbing my tea. And that, I think, is very important to realize that it was possible at one point, and at that point it was exponentially harder. That being said, now you have a much higher quantity of bands, you know, and more laws in place to kind of limit these things. But the general concept is still there, and we have the internet, which trumps pretty much all of it. Anyway, so I wanted to talk about a few key things I've been learning from this book so far. One is the amount of planning that had to go into these things. You would basically call people up and hope they picked up, with the hope that they could maybe get you a show. You had to put this shit together months in advance to get a night. And then you had to make sure you plugged in with the cool people. It was a whole thing. But because it was a whole thing, and fewer shows were happening, people were spending more time making the shows count, right? Because they knew it would be hard for them to do this again. So that in and of itself is freaky, is weird that that was so much work. Furthermore, these kids didn't ask permission. You know, they didn't really have anything going for them. They didn't really have, you know, like traditional labels interested. They didn't have traditional agents interested, so they just did it themselves. That DIY ethos and that ability to just crank it out and see what happens is incredibly important, you know. So many bands get caught up in, oh, we might not be good enough, or oh, we just want to put it out now, and they don't think about, what if we just take our time, do this right, and also be willing to fucking throw ourselves out there sometimes, you know. If you're waiting constantly to put together the perfect live show, and then you're not going to book until you have the perfect live show, well, guess what? It's going to take you another 4 fucking months to get a show. So by that point, maybe your live show won't be so perfect anymore. Because they realized you need to build up experience. They realize you need to train yourself to have that stage presence. It doesn't just come through practice. It comes through being on stage. And that made for some of the craziest shows ever, right? Those 80s hardcore shows are legendary. And a big part of why is because those people really pushed themselves to go up, to perform, and to expand from there. I know that sounds tricky. I know that's a little weird. But that's sort of how you teach yourself and how you grow and learn. You know, these aren't always clear ideas, and sometimes they're pretty difficult to embrace, especially when you're not a hardcore musician. But a lot of people come from that scene, a lot of people understand that scene, and I think a lot of people are in love with the ethics and the ethos, even if they don't love the music. And if you can emulate that ethos in whatever type of music you're doing, you're going to find success, and you're going to bring all your friends up too. Hope that makes sense.